So, Ed, I want to start with you. Let's talk about last night. Let's talk about everything that's going on. Obviously, it's always about independent film. What say you guys on this? Because I loved King of Kong for one. That's in my top 20 of best films of all time.
Thank you. It's interesting. Producing King of Kong, which came out in 2007, but Walter and
Mhm.
I and Billy and everyone, we started filming together 20 years ago for that movie. And so to come full circle, where last night we were able to show the King of Kong for the first time since I think 2008 in a theater at TCL Chinese in Hollywood, and then show this film after like a 15-minute intermission, the new film Arcades and Love Songs. And what was really fun for me is I had to, as we were making Arcades and Love Songs, we had to both honor the King of Kong, but we were not there to remake the King of Kong. This wasn't a sequel. This was not the story of Billy and Steve. It was the story of Walter. And so what we've gotten a lot of, Brian, which has been cool, is really strong King of Kong fans are a little nervous that we were going to try to retread that ground, and then they're relieved because the opening scene of the movie Arcades and Love Songs leaves no doubt that it's a totally different story. But it's about a guy who wants to be a musician, right? And so the feedback from King of Kong fans has been great. Last night was really cool to have people watch it who had not seen King of Kong for years, or remember it or didn't know it at all. We had a lot of people there who had there's Billy. We had a lot of people last night who were brought by King of Kong fans and had no idea what either movie was about. And they had 4 hours of a really great time in that theater last night. It was cool.
That's good to hear that because I keep telling everybody, marketing, the way of marketing films, whether they're feature films or films straight through, everything's changed. I mean, I might be one of the last film critics or whatever you want to call us these days, going to other states to get other people hyped about seeing films that may not be going to the bigger markets. Because I see it in reverse now of what I'm seeing cross country and outside the US. So I love stuff like that. And I see more pop-up screenings, if that makes sense, because everything
Totally.
has changed. So good for you. And I keep telling everybody, it doesn't matter what the film is, watch it on the big screen no matter where you can, because 5,000 theaters have closed. So anytime
Yeah.
I can see things like this up there, there's always that new audience, right, to see films, right? And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Walter,
Well,
talk.
Brian, real
Okay,
quick, real quick,
go ahead,
this is
Ed.
important. This is important because this is part of the culture we're in with making films like this. King of Kong was made out of passion and credit cards and not taking other jobs. This
Yes.
film, this film had to be financed outside of the system because no one would give us money to make a movie like this, even though we have a built-in audience and this classic film that still resonates with people. And you're exactly right. That's what we're really, it's a lot of fun for us. Billy and Walter are great at conventions. They're great at pressing flesh and taking pictures and selfies. And every event we've had so far, the theater loves it. Everyone has a good time. People hang out for a long time. We're having really great success with that exact thing is sort of one screening. Let's totally support it. Let's show up. Let's be there. Let's be grassroots. And that's what's great is, we've had screenings with 200 people. We've had screenings with like 60 people, right? Everybody loves it. It plays great. It really does resonate. And then for the final piece for me as a filmmaker, I won't make a film anymore that doesn't screen in theaters. I just won't do it, even if I have to go rent theaters to play a movie, because it really does. Like my experience last night in that auditorium watching King of Kong back to back with this film as the filmmaker, it holds me to a higher standard. Those people, they came all the way to Hollywood. They paid for parking. Beautiful. I mean, we could not have that better presentation in that theater last night at TCL Chinese. Picture was beautiful. Sound was amazing. The audio was the best I'd heard it. It was really cool. It's a higher standard. We have to hold ourselves to that standard, I think.
Good for you, and congratulations on it, because that's what it's all about. Hey, Walter, talk about last night for you, and also talk about how the reaction of the screening of that, followed by Billy.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting to be part of a double header, being part of King of Kong and being part of occasionally. I'm going to tell Ed that we have to call this the Walter Day Cinematic Universe. Okay, no more King. Anyway, all kidding aside, for me, it was a transformative experience because I am so close to this story and so emotionally wrapped up in this story that I don't have what I consider normal perspective on it yet because I'm so psychologically still amazed by it. It's so surrealistic, so surreal. So um, for me, it's a learning experience. When I was on a trip, I showed a first iteration of the film to 9 people, and 8 of them cried, and that completely took me by surprise because I'm learning how much this is a heartfelt film. That people really approach this from the heart level because there's not one moment where an alien bursts from my chest or Godzilla makes an appearance. It's completely based on relationships and heartfelt values, which really, much to my surprise, maybe even hits a bigger home run than having Godzilla appear. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean because it's funny that you mentioned that because I went back to watch Alien last night and I watched it by myself and I watched it in the dark. And again, what I keep telling people across country and on our shows every Tuesday night, there, Disney came up with this format every 7 years, put that classic film out there. What has to be now done now outside of TCM Film Festival, Turner Classic Movie Film Festival, put those movies out there, let people see it again, because they will come. I'm finding this out in the theaters cross country. They will come see them. I'm seeing them firsthand when I'm going to Raleigh, when I'm going to Georgia, when I'm going to, they're inviting me. The bad thing is, and I think Annie knows this, and a good job with Annie because she's been finding great films. I'm still talking about the films that she had at Slamdance. I'm still talking about films from the last 2 years. So when I see something like this, a bad film doesn't go away. There's always that person that will see something else. A good film is always there. So when I was watching Alien, I was like, it brought me back to why I really love my love of film. And Billy, talk about this because Walter, you were talking about getting into the songs, but also just having people come out because, like I said, with 5,000 movie theaters closed, it's about an average of 6 to 8 miles to people driving to see a movie. So as you were saying, I think Walter, you were saying too, when people are coming to see a movie, good for them because they could stay home, right? And our job is to have people come. That's why you make movies, right?
Mhm.
It was really good because as you say, the idea is people come, they create more trouble, more passion is what brings them to the theater. And when you're there to meet them and embrace them and introduce the film and talk about it, it creates a whole new experience. I kept, as I was selling people on the idea of the movies, I kept saying to people say, "Oh, well, I didn't see King of Kong." I go, "No, that's okay. You can see this movie and not have seen King of Kong. It's a separate experience. There is a relationship that you'll eventually see when you see them both, but you can see either one independently of the other and gain the understanding." What I wasn't prepared for was it's a double feature. People walked out of the theater, intermission, then they walked out after the second movie, and it was, if I can put it into words, it was, "Wow, you were really antagonistic in that first movie, and I don't know, but you're really nice in the other movie." And I'd laugh, I'd smile at him, I'd go, "Well, don't get used to it." You know, I I I have a lot of fun with it. But again, I think it's because of that experience in the theater, and particularly the interaction we have with people that really sells their heart on it. It really does.
What's been really hitting hard, which is great, I think going back the last 7 years, is music and documentaries. And when you put them together, talk about music rights, because everything has changed, even for podcasts now. We have to change everything when it comes to rights for music, rights
Yeah.
for soundtrack. It's difficult. Talk
Yeah.
about that, but it's important, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, off the top, and this is really important because music is a big part of this movie. I mean, we structured this as a musical. I term it a musical documentary. So we follow the structure of how a musical theater hero's journey works, with Walter's music serving as the lyrical narrative post. They're called the post she hit basically in the story. So we've thought of this musically. And Walter's album, he has a contract with him that I'm going to help send with a record label. So his album's going to come out soon. So we've got his musical career started here really soon, probably in the next month and a half. They're going to release his music. Yeah, it's fantastic. We've been working for a while to find him the right label, and we have. So we really see the intersection of this. We know King of Kong fans are going to find this movie. That's kind of, we made it for them with them in mind, but we also had a big eye towards the musical side. And then just as far as rights, we always just start with what we know we can either pay for or don't, like stuff you can't pay for, whatever. Just don't even ever use it in your edit. Just don't get used to it. Just use stuff you can edit. And we had a composer, we had a music library that we have some cues from, and then the nice part is we use 8 of Walter's songs within the movie, but we never oversell it so that the audience leaves wanting to hear more of his music. His music's beautiful. He's a really, really talented screenwriter and a terrible cameraman when you have him on a Zoom interview.
Well, I'm doing so.
Well, it's kind of funny.
It only happens to Walter.
Hey, Billy and Walter, talk about your side from the music side of stuff. Music in his head, Walter's head, but also what did the audience think of it last night for the result? Because I literally, if I could have jumped on a plane and I didn't have a Learjet around, we have at least one, but I didn't have one because it's expensive going cross country, going back and forth. I wanted to go just because of the arcade, just to see the King of Kongs on the screen, and I would have stayed for that too, because you've got to capture the audiences different ways now. It's almost like Barnum and Bailey. Any way that you can capture an audience to get them to come to the theaters, good for whoever's marketing a film, good for the filmmaker, and great for the cast, right?
Exactly. So the musical voyage for me is quite an adventure, because almost 40 years ago, a glamorous girlfriend broke my heart. And a couple of weeks after the heart was broken, I started hearing music playing inside. It's like I was channeling a radio station. As I said in The King of Kong, I didn't write the songs, I listened to the songs. It's like they were in very, very finished, formulated form. And I just was like snatching them out of the air and writing them down and recording them and tape recorders and stuff like that. And I was so transfixed by the experience that I vowed that even though I wasn't a singer and had no expectations of ever being a singer, I was going to someday get up on the stage and I was going to perform those songs for the public so they could hear how beautiful the music was that I was hearing. And it had lyrics and harmonics and harmonies and melodies. So I was very all in on this. And 20 years after that happened, suddenly The King of Kong is being recorded. And I talked to Ed and Seth Gordon about my desire to someday be out of the video games and be focusing on producing and singing and performing my music. And they were intrigued by it. They liked some of my songs, and they put me in the movie singing some of my songs. And they were impressed because they never ever forgot about that. And Ed even said to me, Walter, of all the people who are in the movie, we were most intrigued by your individual story more than anybody else because of so many colorful features of it. So that happened 20 years ago. Now, in recent years, I was at an event, and at that event, someone came out of a crowd, and they announced that they had created a mobile handheld video game called Color Switch, and they recognized me and Billy, so having been from The King of Kong, and he said, well, tell us about the music. How did that ever turn out? And I said, it's still my dream, but I never ever were able to bring it to fruition. But I've never given up the dream, and I still hope that someday I can do this music. So they said, well, we have the financial ability to help you. We want to sponsor your music. We want to pay for all the expenses of your record and actually fulfill your desire to have your music be published. And so suddenly I find myself in a music studio actually recording my music. At that point in time, Ed and Seth found out that Walter finally is recording his music. And they realized that, wow, this is a story about a man who never gave up his dream kept that vision. And even though he was reaching the later part of his life, he was able to pull it off and stand up, record the songs and have to actually make an album. And that's why the motto, in a sense, of the whole movie is, it's never too late.
And Billy, because it is never too late.
Well, it was 1986 was the first time Walter mentioned music to me. And I mean, 86 turned into a decade, turned into a second decade. And he would still talk about music to the point, as his friend, I would pick on him a bit. We'd be at a convention, we'd be in a panel discussion, and he would mention music and how eventually he was going to leave the esports career that he had created, and he was going to pursue his career in music. And finally, one day, I said to everyone on stage, I said, he's been talking about this for decades. Okay, he's created a relationship with all the people here. Okay, he's become the father of esports. And I said, believe me, he's not going anywhere. That was my point. He wasn't going to give up all that he created. But in 2014, when he finally hung up his referee jersey, I thought from 1982 to 2014, he worked all that time to achieve what he achieved. And now he's going to turn it towards music. And at that point is when I truly believe that he actually would do it, that he wasn't just going to talk about it. And then again, at the age of 75 years old, he stamps out his first album. That was quite incredible.
Well, to me, he's just a late bloomer. That's all it is. And then, success has no time limit on it. I think of Mark Zuckerberg. There's always, it's always a woman that breaks our heart, right? And then, I think of Mark Zuckerberg starting Facebook. How do you think Facebook started? He couldn't get the woman.
You're describing Walter as a late bloomer. You'd have to know Walter. He's always late.
Well, hey, I think of this. In 1986, I'm working at KISS FM in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm still traditional radio. For me, it's Pandora and YouTube. So I'm thinking of classic rock and all this stuff as I'm playing video games. Because in Connecticut, I was king of the arcade in our town, in our state. I actually won a lot of the championships. So I think back to that. So that's why I like the King of Kong for me, because I started in that era and then going to home video. So I welcome this and I love things like this because more people, especially kids, need to know where a lot of the things came from. And when you add that great, the song, that great soundtrack, Ed, that's even more important, right? Because some kind of way you got to put it together, because in the old days, as we all know, we'd go to Tower Video, depending where you live, Tower Records, and get all the stuff. And we run into everybody buying albums. Now you're lucky if we can keep Amoeba going if you live in Los Angeles. There's very few places cross country left. That's the sad part about it.
Yeah, with King of Kong, and it was in an era when record labels were doing deals with independent docs. So we got 5 really big songs for King of Kong that we didn't know if we'd be able to afford. We used The Cure. We used Eye of the Tiger. We used songs that we had to pay for, and we at the end of the day, we felt like for King of Kong, if we didn't, we had 3 we had to have, we got 5, which was great on our budget. And it was just because back then record labels were a little more hands-on, personal. If they liked the film, a lot of people would watch your film and, sort of get behind you and help you make a deal back then. So I think that really helped that film, and I'm glad we did it, because those songs, well, they're meaningful to us as kids from the arcade era who made that movie. Like, those songs mattered, but they're transcendent. The music from the 80s really is transcendent. It is so infused in modern pop culture and sounds and all that. So I think that really helped for us to be able to have those tunes in the King of Kong.
Absolutely. And I got rid of, I go back to 1978, being that old disc jockey. I grew up in an all-white town in East Lyme, Connecticut. I remember playing Led Zeppelin, playing Foreigner, with Richard Pryor in the background with all of these things. So for me, it was always about the music and the soundtrack. And then I go to Los Angeles in 1987, and I'm on, I'm in the number 2 market coming from number 32nd, but it was playing those songs. So soundtrack is always important. Jerry Goldsmith, John Williams, those things. These are people that inspired me coming from the drum and bugle corps world. So when I see something like this and other things like that, I go out and tell everybody. I go out and tell them music world, because the arts are disappearing from schools. I can see when I'm going to Texas and, books are banned, although you can't play certain music. And I'm like, you got to learn all of these things. You got to see these music. You got to see the movies. So that's what I'm doing on my end. And it's important because, again, you guys work hard to get these things out there. Annie works hard to get these films out there. She chooses a lot of great films. I'm still talking about the stuff that she had at Slam Dance. So you should never stop talking, because there's always someone who hasn't seen these films. I know we got a couple minutes left. Billy, talk about this. As these things are going on, what was fun about making this movie, being involved in all this stuff, seeing it last night? Because, again, not enough people are going to the movie theater, so I always want to make sure we can get them going back some kind of way.
Well, one of the fun things I had was, ready to go under the bus here, Ed?
Sure.
Ed's talking to me about the films and ideas, and everybody's sharing ideas, and they were good. And I was saying to myself, Ed, this can't be a King of Kong film. This has to be a Walter Day film. And he's talking about his ideas, and I'm saying, okay, Ed, don't tell me that. I'm saying, I'm waiting for him to trip up. I'm waiting for him to lead it into the world that it's like King of Kong 2, that it's a sequel. And I'm like, Ed, this has to be about Walter. And I kept waiting for Ed to sort of slip the other way. And I got to say, he never did. So my compliments to him. But that was my first thought was, King of Kong was that big of a success. And it has left that mark in the gaming world. And when you think of the gaming world, just picture Walter standing there in his referee outfit. You can always make a movie about that, and an easy one. This was a far more difficult road, for everybody. It was unknown territory. So I kept thinking, are we going to stick to the script? Not only did they stick to the script, but they surpassed it for sure. And every bit of imagination I originally had. Truly did.
And Walter, when it goes to, again, music, is it's in a big part. It is a music doc when it comes to that. And again, it's been hot, but it was always hot. When I'm watching Led Zeppelin, becoming Led Zeppelin, if I'm seeing, if I'm running into Jimmy Page, whatever, I'm in the South right now dealing with ZZ Top and the Charlie Daniels' take with Hazel Daniels for all the stuff that we're doing. We're getting ready to create coming out in the fall. When I'm seeing these people and their music rights, really, really important to have that. Obviously getting there and getting people to go, hey, I like this song that he wrote. Where can I go and get it? Sometimes it's hard to go find these places, unfortunately. Walter, what do you say about that? Ed, what do you say about that?
You comment, Ed.
Well, for us, music and film, film isn't what it is without music, right? Yeah. My cousin, who's a doctor, a very good doctor, he's a film nerd, loves films. And he said, film is the art form that takes all of the art and mashes it together, right? Because it's got to look nice, it's got to be composed, it's got to be stitched together properly story-wise. But without that music, and for us, this movie was different. We didn't need famous songs in this movie at all, actually. In this movie, all we needed was to, as much as possible, really use the music of the people. Walter's a musician, Steve Wiebe's a musician, several other people in the film. We have this really beautiful singer that we filmed where Walter Walter went to get voice lessons. Great shots of this woman just belting out. Oh, Walter, what's the song we have her sing in the movie? Amazing Grace. So we have Amazing Grace in our film because this woman organically was there working with Walter's voice coach. So to us, music is it is a background. That's the goal.
Can you talk about the lawsuit at all?
I can.
Go ahead. Talk about that because that's important.
So here's what I said, and I think Billy got great comfort in this because lawsuits. There's been multiple lawsuits. Bill just won in Australia, a very big case. If you haven't read about it, go read about it. Some of this stuff is important when it comes to defamation. But from my perspective, and I think Bill really was comforted by this because those lawsuits are complicated.
Yeah.
People have taken sides. Lots of money, time has been spent. For me, in telling Walter's story, the only reason the lawsuit mattered is Walter got pulled into that lawsuit, and his reputation was being harmed.
Right.
And so when I went to Bill, and his son, who's part of these lawsuits and is in the movie, no one was interested in the lawsuits being the driving narrative of this movie, and they're just not. Walter being a musician is the narrative, and the lawsuit is the hurdle, right? It's a really simple narrative structure. So really, this film's 93 minutes. I think 7 minutes of it is about the controversy and lawsuit, only because the audience needs to know that not everything's peaches and cream for Walter in his life while he's trying to become a singer-songwriter. And so, and I think the guys feel pretty comfortable. Our interest was not in those lawsuits. It was not in the controversy. And it drove people crazy, but I kept telling them, I don't care about the lawsuits. I don't care about the controversy, except as it relates to Walter. He's the main character here. And so that was what was nice for us when we were shooting and editing. We needed the bare minimum facts of those lawsuits and the cheating scandal, just enough so the audience knows there was one and what it was about. The rest, I would tell people, go do your research. There is a rabbit hole of, if you know how to search court documents, all that stuff, have at it. I just wasn't interested in that as it was unnecessary to the story I was out to tell.
Good for you. Ed, last question for you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I actually had a question, but the question's for Ed. Ed, somebody brought to my attention last night, they said the knowledge of the movie being put together actually got out prior to it being finished, of course.
Yeah.
And the movie tells a story. And
I think he froze.
Yeah. That was a dramatic freeze. Like it was,
Oh, go ahead, Billy. We got your back.
I didn't know where I cut off.
You cut off where the movie tells a story and then you froze.
Yep.
Oh, well, the movie tells a story, and within that story, you do address the lawsuit that Walter was unfortunately involved in. And somebody asked me, do you think the movie and the fact that it was telling the story of the lawsuit, do you think that put pressure on the other guys to want to end the lawsuit, which is ultimately what happened? And if that is true, my hat's off to you.
Well, that's the nice part. And spoiler alert, Walter has been, his lawsuit was settled. So that's what's nice, is the film ends with the audience knowing that the lawsuit did end. So maybe it sure helps for us in the epilogue to be able to tell the audience that the lawsuit's over for Walter.
More than settled, it was flat out dropped.
Yeah.
So again, credit to you, Ed.
Thanks. I'll take it.
Ed, Last question for you, Ed. What would you say
Yep.
to get the audience to come see this from the director's point of view?
Well, it's going to surprise you in a way that if you're a King of Kong fan, it's going to scratch that itch for you. But I think you'll like that it's a different perspective. And then for general audience, this is really made for music fans. This is made for women. This is a very, there's a really deep scene where Walter reconnects with the woman who broke his heart on camera, and we've cut together this beautiful scene that in the theater, or if you're with a group of people when it comes out in video on demand, people really are moved by this reconciliation that we have. So it's got a really, really big heart. So fan of King of Kong, don't know anything about King of Kong, one for his dream late in life. All of us have that dream. But yeah, I think it's and what's nice is we constructed this movie where you don't have to see King of Kong. You can see King of Kong before this movie, or you can see it after. It all works. All of those options work.
And Billy, what would you say to get people to come see this film?
Well, I think so much of the music that's spoken about, yet so much of the game culture that we grew up with, it's the same demographic of people. And I just think it's really awesome that King of Kong set the stage that I think everybody who ever saw King of Kong is going to want to see this movie because it's an extension of what you experienced 20 years ago. That's what I think. It's kind of like, it's reliving something from your past, something you enjoyed. So I thought this is going to be successful because it already has a captive audience.
And last but not least, Walter, what do you want people to see? What do you want them to come out of that movie saying? How do you get them to come see this movie? What say you?
Well, I issued a single, one of my songs, and the CD's coming out. I certainly hope they love my music and want to buy it. Uh, uh, but also, it's so much fun to share your story with people, and it's being perceived as a fun, inspirational, uplifting story. Like when we showed this at Long Beach, Ed was telling me that the manager of the theater thanked him profusely, thanking him for making a good movie about good people, and that's really the spirit of this movie. It's a heartfelt movie that's meant to uplift and inspire. And if I can inspire people and uplift them, then it will be a very satisfying voyage for me.
And you can't get any better than that, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for this. Congratulations on last night. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for your time too, because it's really, really important. And I liked how you guys put it together because you got people to come out to see it. When you have arcades, that's a great thing too, isn't it? Because that's what it's all about.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were I would say the oldest friendship that came to see the movie dates back to somebody Walter and I knew in 1983. I mean, that's a long ways.
That's good. Well, now, Ed, one last thing for the audience. Tell them, when is it open again? Where can they see it?
Yeah, come to arcadesandlovesongs.com, arcadesandlovesongs.com, and go to the See It link, and we're just always updating where it is. If you sign up for our email, I promise you I don't bombard. I just update where we're going to play. And then, of course, we'll start updating when we're going to be on video on demand early this summer. But arcadesandlovesongs.com is the place to go to check it out.
Good. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Brian.